All right, we welcome you in the Everything Guide to Sports Betting here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We go back to basics, Betting 101. I'm Patrick Maher, live from Vegas. Of course, the author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum at Josh_Insights. And on a great Friday, we say, hello, Josh. How are you?
Patrick, I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm super excited for today's show because on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting at VSiN, really our goal is to make you a sharper, better, a smarter, better. But we're not just going to touch on all the major sports; those are the most popular ones. But we're going to touch on sports that maybe don't get the attention that they deserve. So, great show lineup today. We're going to talk about horse racing, tips for betting horse racing, your different bet types available to you, how to place a bet in person or online or at a kiosk, and we'll also be joined by some really awesome experts today. We have Eddie Olczyk of ExpressBet. We also have Vinny from VSiN, odds maker, really sharp horse racing guy. So looking forward to it, Patrick.
Yeah, the ponies, as they say, horse racing, a sport I'm insanely passionate about. I can't wait to break it down with you, Josh. But first, let's step backwards to move forward here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Let's kind of set the table. What have we discussed this week? What have we learned? On Monday, just give me a brief recap of this. We went through weather, and we also had Kevin Roth joining us.
Yeah, we were joined by Kevin Roth of Roto Grinder Sports Betting. And Monday, basically, we talked about factors that maybe get overlooked, but can be very important that bettors should be aware of. So, talking about the weather can have a big impact on a game. It can really affect a total when you have really, really, crazy crosswinds or sustained winds in a football game, 10 miles an hour or more. Kind of Kevin's magic number was 20 miles an hour or more. That can really benefit an under. It's harder to throw the ball, move the chains. You have missed kicks, so that can really benefit you when you're betting totals. Also betting baseball, when it's winds blowing out at Wrigley Field, that's great to an over. When the wind's blowing in, benefits the under. You also talk about heat and humidity in college football, how hot days, 85 degrees or more, defense gets taxed, really benefits that offense. So just knowing that these extreme weather situations or scenarios should always be, a better should always know that and be aware of that. Maybe it isn't the only reason you bet a bet type, but something you want to make sure that you're not unaware of going into a bet.
Okay, Josh, then Tuesday, scheduling and numbers, and we had the legend Chris Andrews on.
Yeah, Chris Andrews was great. Basically, kind of on that same theme, we talked about kind of referees, umpires, how they have some tendencies. They're humans in the end, and you may have a big strike zone, which can lead to more balls in play, more strikeouts, and basically, kind of benefit an under in that scenario. Also, NFL referees can favor the over or the under. But really, with Chris Andrews, we talked about how scheduling spots can really impact how the odds makers set a line and how sports bettors should be aware of this, because you always look at NFL teams coming off a bye. If you're a favorite off a bye, especially a home favorite, you cover at a much higher rate as opposed to a dog coming off a bye. You also look at back-to-backs in the NBA. We talked about rest versus tired in the NHL, a rested team that got their legs back against a tired team on the second leg of a back-to-back. That rested team has a big advantage. Also talking about, postseason tournaments and neutral courts and back-to-backs in college basketball, where that really benefits an under when you lose your legs. And then Wednesday, we're talking about NFL futures. We're looking at situations with Brady Cannon where you can capitalize on, betting season win totals, betting teams to win a division or odds to win the conference or the Super Bowl. We talked about how basically the futures market is the only market that's available and open 365 days a year. So tons of opportunities there. And then yesterday, we did a comprehensive breakdown of how to bet college football. We talked about how home field is overrated. We talked about short road dogs having a ton of value, dogs with low totals, different weather systems, and obviously bowl games, best time of year to go contrarian. And that leads us into today, which I'm super excited about, talking betting on the ponies, Patrick. Should be fun.
Yeah, you're being a little humble. I think the information yesterday from Josh on college football betting is the best I've ever heard. And remember, you can become a VSiN Plus subscriber for free right now. That gives you access to the old shows. So if you go to VSiN.com right now, you want to learn, and you want hardened statistics that you can write down and use as a gauge this college football season, go to vsin.com. The information's all there. I mean, these are tremendous statistics and information that is going to help you become a winning sports bettor, and that's what this is all about. Again, as we say hello to you and welcome you in, it's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. I'm Patrick Maher, live from Vegas. Of course, the author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum. Now, I personally am thrilled about this, Josh, today, because we're talking about horse racing. Eddie Olczyk, the legend, Vinny Magliulo, the legend, is going to join us in just a little bit. But let's get the basics started. And here's an important thing to understand. One, if you go to the track, you're just going to be absolutely intoxicated. These animals are majestic. They're gorgeous. It's such an experience cheering on your horse down the stretch, whether you go by color, whether you go by trainer, which we'll get into. But the most important thing to start with is conceptually, betting on horses is a different bet than a traditional sports bet. Your NFL, your NBA, your traditional sports bet where you're betting against the house. It's you against the house, Josh. Horse racing, it's parimutuel, which is simply a French term that translates to wager amongst ourselves. Let's talk about what parimutuel betting is. That'll be the jump off for horse racing.
Yeah, so basically, we had a great breakdown from Dave Tooley at vsin.com. He explained parimutuel betting as the final odds and payoffs aren't determined until all the bets are taken and the track takes its cut and divides the rest among the winners. So basically, you can think of it kind of as a juice, where basically the house will call, and I think some sports bettors might call it the takeout, where basically they're going to take out the amount that they're going to use to pay for the track, to pay for state and local taxes. And basically, once you get that out of the way, which is typically 15, 20, 25% of the overall pot, then it will be decided amongst the winners. So I think that's something you got to keep in mind going into it. I look at horse racing too. If we take a step back, horse racing, we're all horse racing fans 3 times a year: the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont Stakes. But really, if you're an average Joe bettor, you're going to pick a horse based on its name or its color, or just, out of nowhere. You have no real reason to bet it. You just want to get in on the fun. So hopefully today we're going to talk about ways to actually make smart bets in general. But if you look at just kind of history of horse racing, to take a step back, it's one of the longest and most ancient sports, long-term overall. It has its origins thousands of the ancient Greeks. They were racing horses.
Let's pull Josh down for a second. We'll get him squared away. He's got a great story and anecdote to kind of set up the horse racing. And he's so right about the parimutuel. I think this is the most important key. So as a horse player, you're betting against other bettors. Let's simplify it. Think about it this way. You're in a pool. Okay, so the money goes into the pool. The more bets, the larger the pool. The bettor who wins share the overall pool. Okay, so if everybody's betting on the favorite, that number is going to come down. You're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to get your stake back. But again, everything goes into a pool and you're betting against other bettors as opposed to betting against the house. Okay, we bring Josh back in, and I know you have a fun anecdote to set this up.
Yeah, so kind of just looking back historically, touched on it a minute ago, but basically horse racing was brought to America back in the 1600s. British settlers brought horses, and horse racing kind of exploded after the Civil War in the 1860s, 1890s. 1894, the American Jockey Club was formed. What's funny is that in the early 1900s, horse racing was almost wiped out. You had a big crackdown, anti-gambling measures were taken, and this ties right into what you were talking about, Patrick. In 1908, parimutuel betting was introduced, and that kind of saved the sport, because then that takeout was kind of taken out of the overall pot, given to the local taxes, also the track to kind of keep the maintenance of the track going on. So that parimutuel betting, where again you're taking the final odds and payouts are determined after all the bets have been taken and the cut has been divided up. That kind of saved horse racing in general and kind of set the stage for it being such a popular, again, 3 times a year. We all love Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont, but overall kind of the sport was saved through parimutuel betting in the early 1900s.
I think that's a perfect way to set it up, Josh, because when Vinny Magliulo joins us, he's going to talk about when he started booking horses here in Vegas, they were using a traditional betting against the house. And you're going to get murdered that way betting horses. That's why the parimutuel, which is a French word, as I mentioned, that's why they adopted, and here in the States and mostly across the country, we can get into Europe later, they use the parimutuel system. Okay, why don't we start with straight bets?
Yeah, so I think what's really important, again, on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, you got to first kind of know the rules of the road. So, what are the different bet types that you can take advantage of or bet on? What are your opportunities for wagering on horses? So, you kind of lump them up into two different categories. First is straight bets. So, straight bets, they're considered straight wagers. That's either to win, place, or show. And they're mostly for a lot of casual or public bettors in general. They're pretty easy. I think, you can kind of get inundated with kind of the ins and outs of horse racing, which make it a little harder to understand. But these are your basic easy ones. If you're going to win the race, what you're betting on is just who the horse will come in first place. And that's going to give you your biggest payouts overall. You might be looking at a horse that's, 8-5 or 10-1 or 15-1, and they got to win the whole thing in order for you to win your bet. Then you have the place. So the place is a little different. You can have a horse come in either first or second place. It's a smaller payout, but again, you're increasing your chances of winning, because if you bet a horse to win, he comes in second, you get nothing. But if you do the horse to place, he comes in second, you cash. Then the third one is to show. And a lot of new bettors, I think this is a bet type that you might want to keep an eye on overall. It's kind of a good introduction to horse racing in general. But this is to finish in first, second, or third. It doesn't matter if it's first, second, or third. It just has to be top three. And again, this is one of the easiest to cash. It's a smaller payout in general. Minimum bets are usually $2. You got to bet at least $2 if you're betting on a race, which is obviously a small number overall. But just doing some research, I think an easy one, one tip is if you look at the favorite and you bet it to show, top three, you're not going to get a huge payout overall, but you're going to increase your chances. So that's kind of a go-to early one to look at for new bettors, betting to show coming in the top three.
Yeah, you nailed it, Josh. You're going to mitigate your liability with the show bet. Here's what I would say. You're going to start off show betting, and then you're going to graduate. That is something you're not going to continue to do, because you're going to realize even if you win, it's such a minimal payout. So again, it's a great way to introduce yourself to the sport, that being a place or a show bet. Place not as much, but show bets are something you're probably going to graduate from, would be a way of putting it. Frankly, most people graduate to exotics. So let's set up what an exotic bet is when it comes to sports betting.
Yeah, so a minute ago, Patrick, we talked about how there's two basic bet types: the straight bets, the win, place, show, but then also the exotics. The exotics are geared a little more toward your more sophisticated sports bettor, your wise guy, your sharp, who really has been betting horses a while and really has the experience and the knowledge of the different bet types. So basically, you're getting much bigger payouts for exotics. So what are exotics? They're all bets on the horse racing that aren't the straight traditional wagers, win, place, show. So an exotic would be betting on multiple horses in one bet and basically getting a bigger payout. Again, but they're harder to win. But they're, again, the kind of bet that really pros lean on in general. So the first one would be the exacta. What's with the exacta? Basically, you're picking the first two winners in the exact order. So you might hear a horse racer, a wise guy horse bettor say, I got the 3 and the 5 in an exacta. What does that mean? It means that he bet those two horses to come in first and second, with the 3 winning the race and the 5 coming in second. Then you have these other ones here, your other options. And again, they're less likely to hit, but your payouts get bigger and bigger. So this is why betting a little amount could really win you big if you're able to cash these. So the Quinella, Patrick, if I'm butchering that, you let me know. But that's to come the pick the first 2 winners in either order. So it doesn't matter if you have the 3 and the 5 in the Quinella. The 3 could win, the 5 could win. All that matters is that they come in first and second overall. And then the trifecta. This is 3 horses. So that would be finishing first, second, and third in that exact order. So it's got to be 1, 2, 3 with the horses that you've bet in that order. Superfecta, then you get to 4 horses. That would have to be first, second, third, and fourth in that exact order. And then the daily pick, the double pick, the daily double. That would be the winner in 6 consecutive races. You also have, looking at the pick 6, that would be 6 overall. Daily double would be 2. But these are kind of, in general, your basic options if you're a more advanced or sophisticated horse bettor. And basically, you're decreasing your chances of winning, but you're increasing exponentially your payouts if you're able to hit a couple of these.
No, you just nailed it. That was a perfect explanation. We're talking about horse racing here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Now, I think what's important, if we back up a little bit, We're talking about a win bet. Okay. You're betting just a horse to win. Let's talk about how to do this and how it's presented. I know we're going to go over walking up to the book and actually making the bet later in Bankroll Builder, but the odds are presented here in the States in fractions, Josh. So, i.e., 4-1. A horse is 4-1. I want to help the better understand what that means. If you, let's say you bet a $5 for a horse to win at 4-1. So if you bet a horse at 4-1, $5, and it wins, you're going to return $25. 5 times 4 plus the original stake. Maybe you can help the better understand that a little bit more.
Exactly. I think it's important to know what you're what you're putting in and how much you're getting out. So it's going to be basically kind of a calculation on what you're putting in and then your return overall. So you can look at different. I think what makes it easy is there are different apps you can put in to put in your amount of money, and they'll just spit it out to you. I think that's kind of the easiest ones overall. But once you do a couple of these, you kind of get it under your belt. You kind of learn overall what to look for. And again, betting little amounts early when you're first to start, get your feet wet, bet a little, maybe you cash a bit, and that's kind of the good way to get started. Once you're more advanced, then you can kind of extrapolate. But the easiest ones are looking at different apps, different websites. Basically the bet to risk, bet to win, kind of same thing in sports betting. That will spit out to you how much you're going to make if the horses win or place or show, depending on what you bet on. But kind of just some tips overall, Patrick. I love going to Saratoga in New York. I go every summer with my friends, and it's awesome. And we'll talk about the experience of it. It's just a lot of fun in general, but obviously it's much more fun if you win. But just kind of some tips, when you're looking at betting horses, and we'll talk about in the next block as well, but you got to get the daily race program. And a lot of people will call it basically the book. And that's going to tell you all the different races that day. There's going to be a bunch of different races throughout the day. It'll also label all the different horse numbers, what the tracks. If you're at the basic track, they're all going to be at the same place. But getting that daily form is going to kind of get you all the information you need. You can write in it. It's kind of like getting a betting sheet at a sports book. You can write in the margins. But there are some tips and a lot of great information in that betting program that can really help you win. So stuff like leaning on past performance. It'll give a breakdown of all the horses and how many how they've placed recently in their last 5 races. You also look at the surfaces. How is it is it dirt? Is it, what kind of turf is it? Is it firm? Is it muddy out there? How do these horses do in different elements? Another thing I like to look at, Patrick, and I know you do too, is the jockey. The jockey is the guy on top of the horse who's hitting the whip and trying to win. And basically, we keep the horses, or the book, as it's called, keeps the records of all the jockeys and how they do historically. So you'll have a win-loss record, just like Tom Brady is a 205 and 50 win-loss. You'll have each jockey record, and you can lean on these jockeys who have good one-loss records historically. Another one is bloodlines. The book will basically tell you who was the mother, who was the father of these horses, and as a result, you can lean on really good bloodlines, kind of just passing on their good genes to that horse. And then also the eye test, Patrick. This is, I think, what's really cool about horse racing is that you can be an analytics guy. You can look at how the lines move. You can look at all the history of it. But just the eye test, when the horse comes out, they're paraded in what's called the paddock. They look so majestic. It's incredible. They look so awesome, but they look differently. They act differently. You want a horse that kind of looks peppy and eager. They're alert, but they're calm. If you have a horse that's nipping, jumping up, wasting a lot of energy, is sweaty, you look at kind of sweat spots on the horse by their kidneys, that's something you want to worry about because they're expending too much energy and maybe they're going to lose it all before the race starts. So there are so many different tips to look at. But Patrick, in general, what do you look at in terms of basics when you're looking on which horse you should bet on?
Well, this stuff, and you just nailed it, Josh. It's also important. You talked about past performances. They're going to be called PPs at the track. Just make sure you understand that. The horse performance, some horses are bred to run on dirt, and some horses are bred to run on turf. So you look through their bloodlines to find out whether they're performers on dirt or turf. And oftentimes the horses are going to switch from dirt to turf, and you have to make sure you're looking for that as well as far as surface. The jockeys are very important. Some of the smaller tracks are running right now, and the bigger tracks aren't, like Santa Anita isn't running right now. So some of the best jockeys in the world are being displaced. They're going to Oakland. They're going over to different tracks. So you have to make sure you're pairing the better jockeys and the better trainers. Oftentimes what you're looking for in horse racing is a partnership between trainer and jockey. Okay, so think about Espinoza and Baffert when they won the Triple Crown. You see what I'm saying? Think about Mike Smith and Baffert when they won the Triple Crown. These trainers get very comfortable with jockeys, and jockeys get comfortable with trainers. Therein giving you advantage, Josh. And by the way, just quickly wanted to clear up on the fractions. Some people will get intimidated. If I say 4-1, that makes sense to you, okay? You can take the $5 times it by 4 and to get your original stake. If I say 9-2, you get confused, but it's simple. Divide 9 by 2, that's 4.5-1, right, Josh?
Exactly. And I think another thing that you hit on, Patrick, which is important, is breeding in horses in horse racing. Because if you look at the owners, who owns the horse, you always hear Baffert is kind of the goat, the Belichick of all horse racing. But in this book, the daily race program, you're going to get all this information about your PP, your past performance, the jockey. I think I love that you hit on kind of the coach quarterback thing of basically the jockey and the horse, if they do well historically together. That's another thing you want to lean on. But who is the owner of these horses? Because when you're in the game of being an owner, the trainers, that's really, really important, because they have an eye for horses in general. And if they have a history of doing well, of kind of churning out horses that really race great and win a lot of money, that's something you want to lean on. It's kind of like coming from a really successful organization, whether it be a pro sport, a college sport. So all these little things, again, you can go to the horse races, have fun, and say, I'm betting the 5 because 5 is my favorite number. But if you really want to get good at it, these are the little things you want to try to check off each box. Try to make the smartest bet you can possibly make by incorporating all this different information to your advantage.
That is tremendous, Josh. And I want to talk about Genesis as far as the morning line. The morning line, every track has a track handicapper who gives you a number. It's called the morning line. That number adjusts as the pool starts to fill. But the morning line is most important because this is an old school sport. The track handicapper talks to the trainers and sets the number based on the horse's workouts. Okay, always look at the morning line. We're coming back with the bankroll builder here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. How to bet. You're at the track, you want to make a bet. Josh is going to tell you how to do it. It's coming up on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Okay, we welcome you back. It's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And now it's time for Bankroll Builder. Okay, we're going to build that bankroll. We're talking about horse racing. Eddie Olczyk, Vinny Magliulo going to join us here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. But to build your bankroll, you got to make a bet. I'm at the track. I walk up to the book. How do I place a bet?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of one of the most important factors overall, because if you don't know how to correctly place a bet, again, you're going to look like the guy at the front of the ticket window who doesn't know what they're doing. You don't want to be that guy. And also you want to make sure it's correct. You don't want to kind of say the wrong thing, and maybe the horse that the bet you intended to make ended up winning, but kind of you said it incorrectly, and then it kind of screws you over in the end. But again, I think the most important thing, get that daily race program. That's going to be your Bible. You're going to carry that thing around in your hand all day long, and that's going to give you all the information you need to learn about the horses, but also get the info, kind of like what we call the Vegas ID number or the rotation number. You're going to get the numbers for all the different races. So they might be raced, race 1 through 12, and they're it's an all-day event overall. Again, recommend going. It's just a great time and really fun overall. But then you'll also get the horses. They're numbered, 1 through 11. I like, I'm looking at race 7, and I like horse number 11. These are the sort of things that you need to be cognizant of. Also, you'll see the MTP on a lot of these LED or kind of the boards that you see throughout the track. And basically the MTP is the minutes to post. So think of that as kind of a countdown, how much time you have if you want to get an adult beverage or go to the bathroom, or kind of get your last finishing touches on your bet in. The MTP will tell you how much time you have until the post and the race starts overall. But once you have the program, okay, you do your homework, you kind of figure out, okay, this is the kind of bet that I want to make. then you kind of have three basic options. So when I was at Saratoga, which I love going to in New York with my buddies every summer, you basically across the board usually have three options where number one, you can bet with an app. You do it on your phone. It's really easy. If you're brand new, you can get some sign up bonuses depending on where you're betting. The second one is you have kiosks. It looks like kind of like a little ATM machine with a computer, and you can go to the kiosk. You'll punch in your bet. It'll give you a little voucher. You always want to hang on to that because if the horse wins and your bet wins, but you lose the voucher, you're not going to make any money. So you got to hang on to that with hold on to it with dear life. But then the other way is walking up to the window, interacting with a human being, talking to one of the ticket writers in front of you. And if you're new to racing, I would go and just do it in person. Number one, they're going to be very friendly. They're going to make sure it's accurate. They're going to walk you through it if you have any troubles. I remember my first time going at the kiosk. You have a lot of new bettors trying to learn the kiosk and they have no idea what to do. It's super confusing. It's not their fault. It's definitely confusing. But again, there can be long lines and maybe you don't get your bet in. So if you walk up to the human at the counter, you want to tell them what you're betting on, and just like you say, the Vegas ID number and the game number and the bet type and how much you're betting. Same thing. You walk up with your cash and basically you'll tell the person the race number, the amount you're betting, the type of bet, and the horse program number. So you could say, okay, race 7, $10 to win on number 4. And basically that's basically telling the person behind the counter, again, the important thing, the race number, the horse, and how much money. And your bet type, obviously. But then they're going to print out the ticket, give it back to you, and you want to hang on to that thing, and you'll cash it later if it wins, hopefully. But Patrick, we were talking off air, the importance of hanging around with sharps and hanging around with people who are at the track all day long and have decades of experience. Can you just kind of speak to your experience and how important it is to learn from the true horse racing pros?
Yeah, it's funny. While you said that, I thought osmosis, and this is a passion play. Horse racing is a passion play. The people that are into horse racing are uber passionate. And Josh, you and I have talked about you writing your book, The Everything Guide to Sports Betting, and that is an undertaking of passion. When I moved out to Los Angeles, I lived about a half hour away from Santa Anita, one of the most classic tracks on the planet, and I used to go up there 5 days a week. And I met a guy named Jerry. Shout to Jerry. He became my mentor when it came to horse racing. I didn't know anything about horse racing when I walked in there. After 3 years of going to the track, I walked out pretty well versed when it came to horse racing, because of Jerry and the guys that he hung around. Now, remember, this is a passion play. There are people that make money long term on horse racing, but you got to hang around. You got to get to know the trainers. You got to get to know the jockeys. You got to get to know the horse's tendencies. You will see prodigy of horses growing up if you hang around a track. You just get inside information that you can't get anywhere else. So again, it's a passion play, like Josh writing a book or horse race, any type of betting, but horse racing in particular. You'll find a mentor at the track. You just got to go find it. Okay. It's a passion play. I always say that about horse racing. We come back. We're going to be joined by another legend, Eddie Olczyk, right here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Okay, we welcome you back on a Friday. It's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. I'm Patrick Maher, live from Vegas. Of course, the author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum. We're going to bring in the legend, Eddie Olczyk, of course, Express Bet, and Eddie O, not just an NHL legend, but a horse racing legend. And as we say hi to Eddie, I'm just curious if we could pull back a little bit. Your introduction to the sport was when?
Well, first off, good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me. I guess my introduction to horse racing came when I was a 12 or a 13-year-old kid growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. And our team manager, whose son was a goalie on the team I was playing on, was really into the horses. And one day during a spring, a skate around that we had, he had some time and he wanted to stop at the racetrack and make a bet. And as soon as I was there and seeing these 1,200-pound equine athletes cruising at 35 miles an hour down the track, and these crazy humans on the backs of these horses, I just hook, line, and sinker. I fell in love. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just betting numbers and names and whatever. And the first couple of bets I lost, and then I hit an exacta. I think the exacta paid $108. So I went back up to the window to cash my ticket. And remember, I'm only 12 or 13. And I'd made a couple of wagers earlier and lost. And I went back to the same window, and I knew that I was going to get paid because my buddy's dad told me. And the gentleman behind the window said, how old are you? And I said, well, you didn't ask me how old I was when I lost. So I got my $108. I gave him $3 as a tip. I winked, and I've been going back ever since. So that was my introduction to horse racing back in, let's see, probably 1978, 79.
Okay, Eddie, the two major tracks running right now, obviously Gulfstream down in Miami, and then Hot Springs, Arkansas, Oaklawn. Last week, Eddie, I know you got involved in the pick six down at Gulfstream. I was alive in the fifth leg to the 1 through 5, pick 5, and that 12 horse. I had the 12 on the outside for 2,000. He beat me, Eddie. But I set you up this way. Can you explain to the listener what a horizontal bet is, what a pick 3, what a pick 4, what a pick 5 is?
Yeah, well, what you're trying to do is obviously, if you're trying to pick the winner in 3 consecutive races, 4, 5, or 6, it's almost like a parlay card or a parlay bet that you would make. So, if you can use 3 or 4 horses in one race, and if you really like one horse in another race, or if you like, it's too tough of a race and you want to go all. So if you're going to multiply that, just do the math. Go 3 times 1 times 10. And if it's a 50-cent bet, it's only going to be $15 because there's 30 times and it's 50 cents. That's $15. So the idea of it is that the more winners that you can pick in a row, and then the bigger the pot, the bigger the piece of the cake for you is if you can somehow find a way to do it. I mean, I think there's lots of value in certain races, and I think that's where you have to become, I don't want to say knowledgeable, but certainly a heads up on it as of, what tracks on what pool sizes are, the severity of degree of how deep you want to go. Look at my greatest score that I ever had in a racetrack was a pick 6 back some 10 years ago at Old Hollywood Park, where I invested $168 into a pick 6, meaning I had to get 6 consecutive winners. I invested $168, and there was one race in there where I think it was the 3rd or 4th leg. I think it was the 4th leg where I liked one horse, and that was it. It was a full field of 14, and the horse that I liked had morning line odds of 15-1, and it didn't matter what the horse was going to go off at. I just had conviction. You know what? I'm going to sink or swim with this horse because I think this horse can win. And if he does, this is going to cause some separation. So long story short, I'm able to single a horse on a $168 ticket. And meaning I only had, because it was a $2 wager. So I only had 84 combinations of the 6 races. I singled this one horse. He went off at 17-1 and he won.
Wow.
And I caused separation there. And I ended up winning the last race. So I turned a $168 investment into a half a schmil. So what I tell people is I got even 10 years ago. But that's the kind of the idea on the parlay, so to speak, or the pick 3, the pick 4, or the pick 5. And if you want to get, really, in deep end, you go for the pick 6, and now they have different types of rainbow, 2-tie, all-tie, so it keeps carrying until there's one winner. But that's kind of the thought process. So for people that, bet and wager, it's just like it's like a parlay. It really is. But you can use 2 or 3 teams to 2 or 3 horses to 3 or 4 horses to 1 horse, and that's how you get your better payoff.
And that is the best way to explain it. $168, half a schmil, as Mr. Olczyk says. And again, you have to win 5 in a row, and you can build it however you want, and it dictates how much you invest. Low probability, but a huge payout opportunity, like Eddie just highlighted. Okay, Eddie, I have a minute and a half. Give me your best bet of the weekend here.
Sure. Wow. Let's go to race 9 tomorrow at Oak Lawn. It's going to go off about I think 4:45 Central. It's a 3-year-old race, Patrick. For $100,000, it's for 3-year-olds. We're going 3/4 of a mile. It's 6 furlongs. Bob Baffert is sending in 8 rings. Baffert's got a stable, no pun intended. He's got a stable full of unbelievable 3-year-olds. But 8 rings is going to be the favorite with Joel Rosario sitting in post position number 7, betting program number 7. There is a lot of speed in this race, but I think 8 rings can certainly sit out. I think 8 rings is probably going to be 8-5, 7-5. So if you bet 50, you win 70. You'll get back your $130. But for me, I'm looking at the 3-horse Echo Town for Steve Asmussen, Ricardo Santana. I think the race is going to set up where you're going to see a horse that's just going to sit a little bit off the pace. There's a lot of speed on the outside of 3 Echo Town. So I'm going to play a 3-7 exacta box. 7-3 comes in either way. I think you could probably get, if the 7 wins on top of the 3, you'll probably get $9 for a $2 investment. But if it comes in 3-7, I think you might be able to get 20. So if you invest $4, you might turn 4 into 9 or maybe 4 into 20. So 3-7 box tomorrow, race 9, Oak Lawn.
Now we're all playing it. 3-7 exacta box tomorrow, race 9, Oak Lawn. Eddie Olczyk, we thank you so much. You're the best, man. We'll talk to you next time.
Have a safe weekend, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, you too. ExpressBet. Remember, it's 1st.com. I'll come back with a proper read as we continue. It's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting here on VSiN. Okay, it's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Of course, Vinny Magliulo coming up. I want to thank Eddie Olczyk. Eddie was brought to you by ExpressBet, and horse racing is the only sport still going in North America, and the best way to follow the action is with the brand new First Bet app. I use this. It's the best. First Bet is a new betting and handicapping product from ExpressBet. First Bet features include wagering on all of the top tracks across the country, AI-enhanced handicapping tools that tap into a library of more than 200,000 past races to identify horses racing today that fits a winning pattern. Stats and probabilities you won't find anywhere else. HD video and video replays. Visit first.com/bet. Okay, it's the number 1, st.com/bet. We have a promo code for you. It's VSiN500, all one word. And you're going to get a $10 free bet as soon as you sign up. Plus, you can receive up to $500 in bonuses for wagering your first 30 days. Again, it's number 1, st.com/bet. And don't forget, use the promo code VSiN500. We do welcome you back, as I mentioned, the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. And here's my man, VSiN Vinny Magliulo, joining us, Josh. So nice to hear his voice. So nice to see him again. Vinny, how are you, my friend?
What's going on, boys? Good to be with you on this Friday. How's everything?
Doing perfect, man. Hey, it's funny. I just asked Josh. I'll let you run with this, but I asked Eddie this question. So, Vinny, I want to ask you to set this up. How did you get involved in the sport of horse racing?
So I was 8 years old, and I had many uncles that will take clients for every backstretch renovation at the various tracks in the New York metropolitan area. So I'm 8 years old. My Uncle Tony says to me, "Come on, kid, let's take a ride." It's a beautiful day in the spring. It was June, about 1964. And I thought we were going to Coney Island. The next thing I know, we're at Belmont. And I'm walking up to the window. I never saw so many cigars in all my life. And so I'm hanging out with my Uncle Tony, and he introduced me. He taught me how to read the racing form, and I couldn't go to the counter. I walked to the counter with him, but made some bets. I gave him some, a couple of the choices. I was hooked. I also had a buddy that I went to school with who was a mutuals manager for NYRA and worked at both Belmont and Aqueduct when it was running, and of course then upstate to Saratoga. So 8 years old, I got my introduction to horse racing and fell in love with it.
Well, Vinny, this is Josh. It's so great to have you on. You and Eddie back to back. That's about as good as it gets for anyone learning to get into sports, sports racing
Eddie's
or
terrific,
horse.
Josh.
He is, but Vinny, it's so great to have you. And I just wanted to ask you, we're kind of gearing this show, a lot toward new bettors who are looking to get into specific sports or horse racing in general. So could you just kind of take us, you have unique experience from both behind the counter, in front of the counter, but if you have a friend or someone who says to you, I want to get into horse racing, where do I start? What bet types would you recommend? And also what kind of factors would you look at to kind of identify a smart bet for a horsing play?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things you want to do is you don't want to overdo it, and don't be intimidated. So one of the things the first thing you want to do is, and here in let's look at Las Vegas, you can go to one of the race books. You go to the race book at the South Point, and you've got an assortment of all the tracks. And on any given day, there may be 35 different tracks. So kind of narrow it down to one or two tracks that maybe they're from your particular area or something that you're familiar with. Here in Southern Nevada, the California tracks are extremely popular. So you identify a track. You want to get what's called the scratch sheets. The scratch sheet are the sheets that have all the entries on them, much like the betting sheets in the sports book. You get that. You want to get the daily racing form, or as what I call when I was growing up, the Bible, and have somebody walk you through, how to wager and what the different aspects mean. And start small. Just go with win, place, and show bets, or the whips, win, place, show. And you want to say, I want this, or you want to pick out the track. You start with the track that you want, the race number, the bet type, and the horse or horses that you're betting on, the amount of the wager, and then check your ticket and then go from there. You don't want to start overdoing it and complicating things, but start small, start simple, stay within your means, listen to vernacular terminology and things like that. And the Daily Racing Form has some good instructional aspects in it. You can go online. There's many how-tos online. And the job you guys are doing today is outstanding, fellas, and breaking it down for folks in simplest terms. And then, but you don't necessarily want to go up to the window right at post time as a novice bettor. I always caution that to people. Try to go up a little bit earlier. Within the last 2 minutes, especially that last minute, is when you see the longest lines at the window. Don't wait for the last minute as a novice bettor, because you will undoubtedly hear some things that you never heard before in your life. And it'll dissuade you from going back to the window. So bet early and start off small, start simple.
I think that's some great information right there, Vinny. And I also wanted to ask you, when I'm betting sports in general, I really look at line movement. I look at how a line opened, where it moved, and basically trying to look at, okay, where's the public, where are the sharp bettors? Obviously, you do your homework, try to make the smartest bet you can. But how is the market moving and why is it moving, I think is really key. So how do you interpret kind of the morning line? How is the morning line set? And then how do you read line movement throughout the day? How do you know if it's, a sharp guy coming in with, some wise guy money, or is it just the public loading up on a favorite moving a number? So how do you read line movement when betting on horses?
Good question, Josh. And there's a couple of things to consider there, right? First of all, you mentioned the morning line, which is the opening line, and that is set by the odds maker at the track. It's simply a starting point for the wagering, and many times that fluctuates greatly. You may see a horse that's the favorite 5-2 or 7-2 on the morning line, and the horse may go off at 10-1 by the time the race kicks off. Conversely, you may see a 10-1 shot or a 15-1 shot go off at much shorter odds. So the odds do fluctuate, as you mentioned. It depends on the race also, Josh. When you look at, say, the ultimate race or the most popular race, which is the Kentucky Derby, that's the single most wagered upon race of the year in the United States. Everybody gets involved with that race. So odds will, they'll fluctuate there, but they'll fluctuate based on sophisticated money, but it'll also have the most casual money that of any race during the course of the year. I'll simply start. I won't necessarily let the morning line dictate what I'm going to do. I will look at all the factors that you guys have so accurately outlined already. You look at certainly the horse jockey and owner. You look at the connections, right? You look at the workouts as well. I think that's something that you want to pay attention to. What's the horse's record overall? Has the horse run at that particular track at that particular distance? You also want to look at if there's any head-to-head match activity within that race as well between the participants. Certainly the lineage, the post position, and/or track bias. I'll look at how is the track playing that day. If a horse has an inside post, but the rail or the first 3 spots are cashing that day, that's certainly something to take into consideration too. What's the weather like? And if it's an off track, which is if it's wet, if it's rainy, and is it sloppy, does the horse like that or not? Is it a horse that's maybe come off the turf to the dirt? So there's other factors that I'll take into consideration too. I'll make sure I monitor the wagering on it. But as from our side of the counter, we really don't have to care about how the money is being bet because we have no risk. Years ago, we did have risk when it came to horse racing because it was not parimutuel. But in parimutuel, unlike the sports side, the decisions are not necessarily, they're not going to impact the house to the negative potentially.
I think while you were saying that, Vinny, which is the best information ever, the Bayer speed figure, Andrew Bayer, who is, probably the most well-known author when it comes to horse racing, came up with a speed figure, sabermetrically. I'll use that term. You're going to see it in your daily racing form or 2 or 3 numbers, whether, the higher it gets, the faster as far as the applied number from Andrew Bayer. So the Bayer speed figure is something I wanted to throw in there as well.
No question, Patrick. I do pay attention to the speed figure. Andrew Bayer does a great job out of Maryland. He originated out of the Maryland and the East Coast circuits. You want to look at that speed figure, and is it consistent? Also, right? You want to. It's just like anything else about the horse. But if there's a consistency, particularly if you see the horse on the increase with that Bayer speed figure, then I think that's an important factor as well.
Vinny, when this quarantine is over, you're the first person I want to hug, man. You're the best. We love you.
Thank you,
By
Vinny.
the way, boys, and Vinny, this is for you. Quick Picks Virtual. Quick Picks introduces a new betting game featuring all-time greats from the NFL, Vinny. If you're looking for action during the shutdown, how about Quick Picks Virtual? It matches superstars from then and now, your time and my time, Vinny, using historical stats to determine winners. Who was better in their prime, Aaron or Peyton, Julio or DeAndre, Zeke or AP? Now with Quick Picks Virtual, you can play the matchups. It takes less than a minute to create your ticket. You can spend as little as 10 cents and win $50,000. And for a limited time, VSiN customers get this special offer. Get a $1 match up to $100. That's awesome. When you sign up for a new Quick Picks account, go to quickpicks.com/VSiN bonus. Do it now. The offer will expire soon. You must be 21 years or older and a resident where Quick Picks is offered. That's quickpicks.com/VSiN bonus. Start playing Quick Picks Virtual now. Well, Josh, I think we did it. We covered horse racing. Feel good with it?
We did it. I feel great. What a pleasure it is to have 2 goats of horse racing come on and kind of just walk us through because that was so much fun. And again, you got to remember, I think at one point I want to hit on that you mentioned earlier, Patrick, which I think is really important. Go there and find that old guy, and I say that in the most loving term possible. Find the old guy sitting in the corner with his old 1920s hat. Pick his brain. You're going to be so surprised to see how willing they are to teach you the game and really learn from the experts. Put everything you learned today on a piece of paper and just start running with it.
Nailed it, Josh. I'll see you on Monday. It's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. You missed anything, go to vsin.com. It's VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.